let's talk about the exclusion process. Not only, we have a ton of questions that came in on the exclusion process. So, for those of us who don't know, and then Pat, I'd be really interested in some of your kind of real life experience in doing some of these. But in general, the idea is that you're submitting to the government your product, and you're making a claim that because of a multitude of different reasons or potential different reasons that you can't buy this product here in the US, that China maybe is your only supplier because they're the only ones in the world who make said product, or so on and so forth. So, that process is online, list. Go ahead.
So anyway, just a couple things about the exclusion process.
Yep.
So there's 3 lists so far, possibly a 4th list. Each list has its own particular exclusion docket.
Mm-hmm.
List 1 and list 2, the time frame to submit an exclusion is already passed. So they opened it up for 90 days. I think list 1 opportunity expired in the fall of last year, and list 2 it closed in December of last year, early January. But those are passed. You can't file any new exclusions on those products. But what you can do is, as those exclusions are granted, they're open to everyone. They put those exclusions in Chapter 98 or 99, and if your product falls within the description of that excluded product, you can just use that tariff code and you'll enter it duty-free. So I'd encourage you, if you are paying list 1 or list 2 duties, call your broker or look up the tariff itself and see if you fit within any of those exclusions. They're still going through list 1 exclusion requests. There were over 10,000 of them submitted. They've only answered about half of them. I think the approval rate was between 15 and 20%. They're very hard to come by. But if they are granted, they're made public and everyone can use them. List 3, there hadn't been an exclusion process until recently. Until that tariff went up to 25%, the government felt there was no need to offer exclusions on a case-by-case basis. Well, now it's gone up to 25%, and they've apparently changed their tune. Not to mention they have been getting a lot of heat from Congress. But in any event, they have promised to open up an exclusion docket for list 3 at the end of this month. We don't know what it's going to look like, but we've seen the exclusion form that must accompany all exclusions, and we can extrapolate based on list 1 and list 2, which were the same, what you'll have to hit on in these exclusion requests. In the notices for the list 1 and list 2 exclusions, they wanted you to at least touch on 3 things. 1, whether or not you could get this product outside of China. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. They also wanted you to hit on the economic harm it's causing to your company or to the larger industry or the U.S. as a whole. So, you may be able to concede a little bit that your product can be sourced elsewhere from China, but these duties are nonetheless causing such an economic problem for us and for our industry or for our region that an exclusion should still be granted. And the last thing they want you to touch on is whether or not the product you're requesting exclusion on is related to this China Made in 2025 initiative, which is an initiative started by the Chinese government years ago, where they wanted to become an industry leader in 10 key fields. They were all heavy tech fields, computers, telecommunications, where they want to be a leader. The U.S., they don't want China to lead in these industries. They want the U.S. to lead in these industries. So that's really where a lot of this animus is born from. But if your product is not related to these industries, you stand a much greater chance of getting an exclusion than if it is. So I think that's probably what the List 3 exclusion process is going to look like. I think you'll probably have a limited amount of time to get them in. The other ones, you had 90 days to submit all exclusions. If they were granted, they were retroactive to the beginning of the tariffs, and they were public. I think you're going to see a lot of that with the List 3 tariffs. I think the USTR also said yesterday in testimony that if there is a List 4 that goes into effect, there'll be an exclusion process for that as well.
Correct.
And I think that would be similar to List 1 and List 2.
So just to kind of recap that is, if your product was on List 1 or List 2 You have not filed an exclusion, you cannot. That process is closed.
You're out.
Then you look at list 3. And I think really the question here is, obviously there was an original March 17th date, right? That was the original date thrown out by Congress that said, hey, there has to be TARA, there has to be an exclusion process for 3. And now we're June 19th, right?
Right.
So you look at that, but I do think that based on what you're saying is that there's definitely work that can be done today to get ready for those list 3 exclusions. There's work that can be done internally at companies kind of preparing for that list 3 work, because as you said, it's a really tight window.